to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence, please.
Let's take a moment to remember the 4 firefighters and 11 police officers that have passed since our last board meeting.
Thank you. Please be seated. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have quite a meeting tonight, and I thank everybody for being here. And as we've seen on the agenda, we have not only a budget hearing, but a budget approval or disapproval, depends, and also the selection of our fire chief. So with that said, let's get right to work, and I'll call on Chief Coyle for the years of service recognition, if you're ready.
Yes, sir, I'm ready. Thank you. So one of the things that we decided to do was just to spend a moment, even if the people that were recognized aren't able to be here, but each time people hit these benchmarks, is just bring it up in a board meeting, talk a little bit about them, and you know what they've done to kind of move Sedona forward in a bunch of different ways. So one of the individuals today that is reaching one of those benchmarks is firefighter Bruglio. He is 5 years in, currently is a fire paramedic, and he used to work as a corrections officer before he came here. He seemed to integrate well into the fire service. I don't know if that necessarily is a good thing about us or a bad thing about us, but anyways, he's done a good job since he's been here. He came to us with some fire crew experience from working with some of the Department of Corrections crews, taking them out on fires. He was able to use that experience to quickly become an engine boss, and he's been an asset to our wildland program as well. One of those guys that you can usually count on to come and take an engine out, even if it's going to someplace like the Goldwater bombing range, where lots of people maybe don't fancy themselves spending a couple weeks, but he's usually good to go with bucking up and dealing with it. So that's Phil, and been a great firefighter, 5 years in, and he's got his medic now, and I expect great things from him. The second one, Angel, there's a much more complex and sorted past with Angel because he's been here 20 years. But I'll save a lot of that for his retirement. So I'll just talk about the good things right now, and will not provide any video evidence. So Angel, he's been a captain since 2007, and one of the things the board should know about Angel is that whenever someone's bidding on his crew, he has a set of standards that he puts out to everyone that has the opportunity to bid. And I have seen this set of standards a couple times that were provided to me. It says basically, if it's kind of like, I'm not your mom, and she doesn't work here, one of those things, except with a lot more detail. So, but through doing that, he's helped raise the bar on a shift and expectation about what professionalism is about, both in the station and outside of it. And I think that, while Angel's approach to that may be somewhat unorthodox, it has provided the appropriate response. So yeah, Angel has 20 years on. He came to us from Verde Rural, promoted from firefighter medic to engineer in 2001 and then to captain in 2007, and completed his associate's degree in 2008. And he's done a great job with the help with the PAD program, and he's actually been working with Jeremy and took over the locks and keys and is helping us with that access control, which was a complex project and a big lift to be able to get us where we have an appropriate level of security at all of our stations. But his attention to detail is well suited for that task. So those are the two I'd like to recognize today.
Well, thank you very much, and please express to them our congratulations for reaching those milestones. 5 years may have seemed like forever, but it's just a blip on the whole radar screen in retrospect. So
Roger that.
So thank him for us. Thank you. At this time, I believe we have a speaker from the public who would like to address the board. She's filling out a form now. And because of the items, yep, I already got you pegged over there. With that said, I'm going to take the liberty to move the agenda about just a bit to bring her up to the front. So I'm going to take item 7A, public comments from the public, and take this moment to hear her point. Chief Mazulis, as a formality, do we have any speakers from the public? Comments from the public?
Been made aware of one.
Okay. Please bring her up. There, she's there. Please introduce yourself with your address, and then also we have, I believe it's 3 minutes is what the norm has been. So with that said, floor is
Blimey.
yours.
Since when does anything happen this quick in Sedona? My name is Cheryl Fleet. I'm at 200 Carroll Canyon Drive, and I've been a Sedona resident for 26 years. I'm here today to ask the Fire Board to consider the elimination of all burn permits to Sedona residents, not to contractors, Sedona residents. When I purchased my home in 2000, I cut down a lot of brush, made a big pile on the dirt road, a dirt driveway of mine, got a burn permit, got a couple of hoses out just in case. 9 o'clock Sunday morning, wasn't a breath of wind, set fire to my pile with a friend, thank goodness, and who knew? I was a detective in the New Zealand Police. We hung out with the fire people all the time. I never learned that fire creates its own wind. Within 5 minutes, my 20-foot pile had a 45-degree angle to it, and 2 of my live juniper trees were on fire, and our hoses just managed to put them out. Do you drop the hose and run in and call for help, or do you keep trying to put out the fire? I chose the latter. I dodged a bullet. Only 112 burn permits have been issued to Sedona residents this year. That is 0.01% of the population. So what that tells you is that 99% of us who live in Sedona are already finding ways to deal with our green waste. I've spent the last 20 years leading adventure tours around the world, and one thing I'll tell you about third world countries is they have trucks that belch diesel smoke all over you, and there's burning fires on the side of the road where residents are burning their sugarcane or trash or God knows what. We are not a third world country. We are not a third world city. Why are we letting backyard burning happen, for Pete's sake? Remember this time last year, it was 100 degrees. We'd had an hour's rain since February. There was a steady wind blowing. It was scary. I jumped on next door and I said, is anyone as concerned as I am? I see these homeless people walking by our house, living down in Carroll Canyon, and we're all, to me, just one errant cooking fire away from being homeless ourselves. There were like 50 people that jumped on and agreed with me or said variations on a theme, and within 2 weeks, I read in the paper that a multi-agency task force of police, fire, and God knows who else had gone out into the forest, even using drones, they said, found these homeless folks, and didn't harass them, they educated them about the dangers of fire. And then mercifully the monsoons came and we all lived for another year. So, you know, why am I here today specifically? I have a 75-year-old neighbour who annually gets a burn permit. She scrapes all her grass and leaves and God knows what into one big pile, sets it alight, and the neighbourhood stinks for about 2 days, and we're all like dodging the smoke and cursing our nice neighbour. And I thought, to heck with that, I'm going to go and talk to her. And I did, politely. She listened, and blow me down, she went and ordered a Patriot trash bin, and all that grass and leaves that she was going to burn ended up in the bin and was hauled away yesterday. So you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Right.
And so that made me think, okay, can I come here and ask, can we get rid of this, seeing as there's only a few people still doing this? Look, we've got air quality issues. All last week, when you check the Sedona weather, air quality lousy, air quality bad, air quality bad. We can't do...
Ms. Faint, I hate to interrupt you, but you've exceeded the time.
Have I really?
Oh, yeah, you really have. But your point is well taken. We will
sit
take it
down?
under consideration. and we will address it and agendize it on our next meeting, next month.
All right.
But I do appreciate you coming down and speaking to us.
Okay,
Thank you.
I will finish by saying what could possibly go wrong.
Thank you very much. Okay. Getting back on track here, next item on the agenda is our public budget hearing. And I would like to, at this time, open the public hearing for our proposed fiscal year, the 2019-2020 budget. And I will do that with, Gabe, is there a presentation you want to do?
There is, yes.
Okay. And while you're getting that ready, I will go ahead and, with the opening of the public hearing, call the public if there's anyone who has any questions about the budget.
Thank you.
With that said, there will be a second call to the public for any speakers. And I see there is none. So with that said, Gabe, if you will proceed with your presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is the final presentation on the FY 2020 budget. Remember at the last board meeting, the board did tentatively adopt the budget, and we have posted for the minimum of 20 days on our website and public posting places. As of today and up to the board meeting, I've not heard of any public comment regarding the budget. So with that, we'll go into just starting off with just some budget highlights. We have spent obviously an extensive amount of time going over the budget on multiple board meetings, but before we ask the board to tentatively adopt, there are some things I just want to kind of cover again. So the FY 2020 budget has a proposed tax rate of $2.50, which equates to 14.7 million. It is an increase of 698,000. And of that, a portion of that increase was made up by a growth in assessed value of 3.7%, and then the rest is a 3-cent increase in the proposed tax rate. Our other non-levy revenues, ambulance, communications, all of those have some small increases for inflationary measures. For example, our ambulance, we did get the general, or I should say the automatic rate increase by Department of Health Services approved. So that is factored in our non-levy revenues for next year. As well as communication rents also have escalators built into those, and that was factored in the budget as well for those revenues. On the expenses, our personnel expenses, we do have a 2.8% cost of living increase for all staff across the board. Again, reminder that 2.8% is tied to the Social Security Index increase. As well as a step increase for all eligible staff. So if they're still within the step scale system, they will move up a step if eligible. Fortunately, we did see a decrease in PSPRS this year and workers' comp. I will kind of give a caveat on that is we do have significant increases is what we're hearing from PSPRS coming, not next budget year, but the following one. And so our budget is already kind of preparing us for that now, but as we work through the next budget cycle, that's gonna have to be something that's on our mind as we work through that process. On the operational budget, we maintained all operational expenditures. If you remember from the meetings, we spent a lot of time meeting with program managers and division chiefs and really isolating what the needs and the requests were at that time, and really developing that understanding that there is a contingency in place within our budgeting process and our funding, that if there are items that come up that weren't budgeted for, weren't aware of, it's always something that can be brought to the board later on. We did increase some costs for station security and some special operations expenses in the budget on the expense side. Finally, so we had actually a total increase of our budget by 2.7%, and that's of operational expenses. And then as far as our restricted funds, we are still going to allocate 1.2 million to the capital fund. And finally, the development of the end leave liability fund will occur this year with funding in the budget of 125,000. Okay, any questions so far? All right. So just in summary on our capital plan, and again, you have the detail in your packet, but we are continuing out our 10-year capital improvement plan. Just a couple things to note from our last discussion. Remember that, the work on Station 4 is going to be starting sooner rather than later. Although the first debt service payment isn't in the budget till 2022, understanding though from financing time, construction time, before when that first payment's due, that gives us adequate time. And again, the whole point of the capital plan is the flexibility to adjust as need be. And so if priorities get moved up on that, then we'll look at reprioritizing some other items on there to ensure that there's adequate funding all the way through. Chief, is there anything else you want to add on that?
No, I think you hit on it, we're staggering those out.
The question I have for you, Chief, Fire Station 6 is starting to wind down as far as final payment on that.
Correct.
So at the worst point in time, are we going to have 2 construction payouts going down, or? We would, the way that we have, we've scheduled this, beginning with the 2022 fiscal year as the first year that we would start paying debt on station number 4. There'd be 2 years where we'd pay debt on station number 4 and station number 6 at the same time. And I think that those 2 years, given the added permitting and other kind of relationships that we'd have to build to be able to move forward with Station 5, then there would, as soon as we got done with that Station 6 debt, there would be a need to consider whether it's the appropriate time to pick up that Station 5 debt. And if that's done, then Station 5 and Station 4 would run concurrently for a period of time as well. Okay, thank you.
And just important to note is all of this is in those 10-year projections that are in your budget document as well. So, okay. Any other questions on the capital funding plan? All right. So by statute, we're required to develop our budget and then project out for the next year. So as you can see comparatively in the chart here, we have our 2019 approved budget and then our 2020 tentatively adopted budget. And you can see the 3.7% growth in AV. Our mill rate of $2.50 is generating us $14.7 million in property tax revenue. Our fire district assistance tax is $404,000. And actually, when I presented the draft budget, that number was actually about $380,000. We got confirmed numbers back from Yavapai County, and we did see an increase of about $15,000 on our projected FDAT. And so what I did is I just reduced our carryover revenue by that amount. So we went from about $85,000 in carryover to just drop down to $70,000. And then while I'm talking about carryover, you'll see for 2021 we're projected at $75,000, but then the rest of the 10-year projections we are not utilizing any carryover anymore. So that'll be the last year that we have that carryover amount included in any of our budget and or projections.
So, and if I could add on to what Gabe just said, so part of our effort to streamline the process and make it where what we're budgeting is reality when it comes to what we're spending means that we'll lose that ability. So by getting better at what we're doing, we've kind of created a need to continue to get better at what we're doing because there's less of an opportunity to bring some funds forward to make it work. That wasn't very budgety, so
That's
if you want to add
perfect.
something
That's
to that.
perfect. And then finally, we have the summary FY 2020 budget. We ask for adoption of a FY 2020 budget for $17,659,070 at a tax rate of $2.54.
Okay, that's your final asking?
That's my final asking.
Okay. Okay. At this time, is there any other questions for Gabe that we have in regards to the budget? Okay.
I don't have any more questions, but I just want to thank you, Gabe, first of all, and Chief Coyle, for the effort you put into this, the work and hours. I also want to just mention to the public that while there are no questions right now, that's because there's been many in the past 4 months about this budget, and that the board has been active in looking at many details of it. And so that's why there may not be any questions right now.
Okay, thank you. Al, Gene, or Joy, anything? Okay.
Here's a question. In my education on how the Fire District Board budget works. The actual mill rate, the tax rate, it could be higher, but it's actually 2.54. What is the maximum mill rate that we could have?
So by statute, there's a couple things that limit our tax rate, but ultimately we have a hard cap of $3.25. However, there is also, you could only increase your levy no more than 8% every year. However, that's cumulative. So if you actually look at our levy limit worksheet, I mean, our capacity is far beyond the $3.25 that we have that cap at. So, but we can raise up to $3.25.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think, Gabe, what's really helped us out is the assessed value has continued to go up,
Correct.
allowing us to keep the mill rate at a steady pace.
Correct. And I think one of the big things to just add on this year's budget cycle was the chief really getting involved and getting the program managers involved and educating them on the finance process, the budget process, because we didn't see the growth in assessed value that our economists had predicted. But we were able to keep that mill rate relatively low because we really fine-tuned our budgeting processes even more than we had in the past. So.
This is really appreciated for our taxpayers. Not only have we benefited from rising appreciation of homes, but also from watching the budget very carefully. So we have not used that appreciation in homes as fully as
Correct.
one might think would be possible. We've been very careful about the budget.
Okay, with that said, then I will formally go ahead and close the public hearing portion and entertain a motion to approve the proposed fiscal year budget 2019-2020, along with the pay schedule as indicated here. And also with that is the resolution 2019-04, which is the approval of the fiscal year 2020 budget. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right. Thank
Budget
you.
passes. Thank you.
Yay.
And again, Gabe, thank you for all your help and guidance along with staff and all others that participated in that. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right with you, what we'd like to do is remove the two non-speaking members of the chief selection process from the group, and then we'll get the first one presented up here and queued up and ready for y'all.
Okay. Did you want to introduce them all at once and then ask the two to go, or just one at a time? How do you want to do that? As you just described?
They're standing. We'll introduce them all at once.
Okay. I'm fine.
So to the right, right over here, I have Mr. Jim Dickerson, and then I have Eric Tryon back there in the Greg Tryon. Greg Tryon. His name really is Eric on his resume, so it gets confusing. And then it's John. That's Eric. Oh boy. And then John Troutwine. And then this is Dr. Davis in the front row here, who I think definitely deserves an introduction as well, because he has helped us to take our process and move it to a place that I don't think we've seen our process before, in a level of professionalism and just the outreach and the number of personnel that we're able to get in. And I'm confident that any of these three candidates that are standing in front of us do a wonderful job replacing me, and I look forward to it, actually. So with that, I think we can excuse the other two, and then we'll get Mr. Dickerson set up to go.
While they're exiting the room, I'd like to take a moment to thank Dr. Davis and your organization, sir, for guiding us through this whole process. Whether this is the right time to do it, I'm doing it anyway, but I wanted to make sure that on behalf of the board, without your guidance, we wouldn't have been here where we're at today. So again, thank you very much for everything that you've done for us. I don't know if you'd like to say a few words.
Yeah, if I could. Good evening, Mr. Chairperson, members of the board. I wanted to just thank you for the opportunity to work with Sedona Fire. Obviously, this is a critical decision for you, and it was an honor to work with the board, to work with the staff of Sedona, as well as the great candidates that we have, and I really appreciate their endurance and participating in the process. So best of luck to everyone in the room. The hard part for me is gonna be seeing who does not get it, because it was a tough process for them, and like I said, greatly appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Okay, who's first up?
Members of the board and staff, Dr. Davis, thank you very much for bearing with us through all this. It's a grueling for both sides of the table, I believe. I'm Jim Dickerson, and this will be my presentation for y'all tonight. I want to just take a quick moment and say this is a beautiful community, and it'd be an honor to be with you guys. A picture from up by the airport there to start off with. Quick about my education and certifications. I hold a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. It's in law, politics, and society, and they kind of put a degree together after somebody decided to triple major. Pre-law, political science, and sociology. If you do it just right and take about 32 credit hours a term, you can get it done in 2 years. I also minored in insurance management and meteorology. Why all those things all at once? Number one, they're everything that's required to be a fire officer, and number two, someday probably run for Senate. That's just an over-lofty goal. I am a member of the National Fire Academy. I'm in the Executive Fire Officer Program. I'm in year 3. My year 1 paper was on a standard of cover, which is how a fire department will operate and respond to things. That aligned with the CAFI accreditation process for the department I'm currently with, and is in process and working well. My year 2 was about using tsunami and wildfire routes congruently for my district. It's a problem that my district I currently work in sees, and it's very important to plan for and have auxiliary plans for evacuating people from whatever situation we may find ourselves in. Into my certifications, I'm an NFPA Fire Officer 2, Instructor 3, Rope Rescue Technician, Hazmat IC, all kinds of things down a piece of paper that took a bunch of classes and got certified in, that many of the other candidates are as well. It's very important to me that I be as certified as many of my staff, especially in the technical rescue, so that I have an idea when talking to them. I'm also a nationally registered EMT and CPR instructor. A lot of my career has been training up to this point, and I've enjoyed it very much. In the wildland form, spelled it wrong on the PowerPoint, the National Fire Committee group on wildland firefighting, doing the crosswalk with the NFA, that puts me about at the level of a division group soup with my certifications. It's very well spoken for. And then extensive NIMS training and deployments. I'm on the Type 1 U.S. Coast Guard response team, where I responded to the Deepwater Horizon and Hurricane Katrina as a division group supervisor. Was the safety officer for Deepwater Horizon for about 6 months. That was very exciting, and gained about 60 pounds on that deployment being in New Orleans. I'm also an International Society of Fire Instructors live fire instructor, so I can be the lead instructor for any live fire incident, whether that be a acquired structure or fixed structure. All right, and my experience. My experience with the fire department began when I was very, very young. I grew up very close to a small rural fire department and decided just to hang out there more than at home, so I kind of grew up in the firehouse. I was an explorer and then a volunteer firefighter with the Newton Fire Department, where they used to make Maytag washers and dryers. So middle of Iowa, great little department. I learned a ton about being a firefighter there, became a firefighter 1 and instructor 1. Moved on to college for fire science, and then upon returning from that, went to work for the Urbandale Fire Department, which is in the Des Moines metro area. Through the Urbandale Fire Department, I went to West Metro Training Academy, where after the inaugural class, I was brought in as the training officer. There was 9 different departments that operated within that training structure, and we trained everybody from firefighter 1 to fire officer 1. It was a grueling process and a lot of academy time, but I got to integrate with a lot of the departments and use a lot of their equipments, and started to understand how to morph departments together. From there, I went to work for the City of Ames Fire Department, a 100% career department. 4 stations, lots and lots of calls, college town where Iowa State University is. Worked there for 6 years and felt the calling to go west. Came west to what is Netart's Oceanside Fire and Rescue, which is a very small town that's right on the coast. All tourist driven, and we had 3 paid members with about 50 volunteers. Working with volunteer firefighters is amazing. You get to herd people around that are used to doing their own thing and making the calls on their own into the paramilitary system that we have. While I was working for Netart's Oceanside, I took it upon myself to start a fire science and EMS program at Tillamook Bay Community College, where I was the program chair for 4 years and the lead instructor. That program is still going strong. I stepped back to allow some of the other firefighters in the area to take over as instructors and the chair of that. After Netart's Oceanside, I moved to Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue, which is further down the coast, and that's how you pronounce that, is Siuslaw. I had to call before I applied for the job there. I'm the operations chief there. I've been the acting chief on and off for the past 3 years through all aspects of what we do. We're also in an intergovernmental IGA with Western Lane Ambulance Service, which is an entirely different taxing district and an entirely different service area, and not a fire district, but a public health district. So merging those together at the managerial level, I'm in charge of their budget, their operations, my operations. It's a grueling task, and it's been very fun, but it's also prepared me for a position such as Sedona Fire Chief. Throughout this entire time, I've been a member of the United States Coast Guard Reserves. I currently am the training officer and aircraft rescue firefighting captain for pretty much the West Coast, Petaluma all the way to Canada. So if there's a helicopter that flies and there's guys that take care of the firefighting, I'm the guy that teaches them how and runs all the operations for them. So rather extensive budget, 4 or 5 different fire trucks that are spread out all over the place that I'm responsible for, as well as the training records. It's been an excellent opportunity. I've done some really neat things with the Coast Guard, such as a Deepwater Horizon event, Hurricane Katrina. Almost got activated for Florence, but I was very much needed at Siuslaw Valley, so I didn't go. It's been a rather extensive career, and yes, I have worked with a lot of combination departments. I've worked for big metro departments. I've worked for very small rural departments, all of which have prepared me. Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue manages the same population along a same tourist-based economy, along one major thoroughfare that a lot of people are just passing through on the way to the next spot. So I'm very familiar with tourists and things like that. Sedona in the future. Okay. So things that I see big on the horizon, the strategic plan and making sure we have sustainability as a department. As we look at the programs and we look at moving forward, we have to make sure that's sustainable and what the stakeholders are really looking for. What are we doing to serve the community and the visitors that come in the community, and can we sustain that level of service through many, many years into the future? We can do that as long as we maintain fiscal responsibility. I'm sure Gabe can help us out there. Maintaining fiscally responsible, it's the public's money, and they trust us to make the best decision and use that. As we look at fiscal responsibility and maintaining our service levels, we need to make sure we're looking at the reserve funds and replacement plans, both for stations, apparatus, all the way down to gear and radios. If we don't have a good plan to replace those things, we get jumped up and bit by projects that come up. Something also that I very strongly feel about is succession planning. We have a lot of members that are right in that middle ground, and we need to be prepared to train people up and have them ready to take the next step in their career. As an operations chief or fire chief, I feel it's my job to work myself out of a job and have many people underneath me prepared to move into that spot. Another thing we should focus on is our community risk reduction, so we don't have people doing a backyard burn, catch their entire neighborhood on fire. It's good to get out and do that community risk reduction. It's safer for the community, and it also reduces the workload on our firefighters. It's much better to do public relations beforehand than get out there and have to tell them why their fire started. How I operate. I use the chief's bullseye. This is something that was taught to me very early in my career, this is how to get what you expect when I was a firefighter, and I've carried it with me all the way through being an operations chief. That's the target. Safety and performance. is it the big thing in the middle. So when we look at safety and performance, that's what we target in on. Customer service and professionalism also. Whenever we hit the target, we're in good. As far as safety and performance goes, safety is our top priority for our people and those that we protect. I want everybody that goes to work to be able to go home and go into retirement and be retired for a long time, happy and healthy. There's far too many firefighters that are falling prey to incidents on the job and or after they retire developing health problems, and I want to help prevent that. As we get out for the people that we protect, we're going to protect them in the safest way possible. Now, we can't be a complete risk reduction, but we are going to go out and operate safely. Community risk reduction, we're going to make those efforts to keep our public safe so they don't have that life-changing thing. We're going to educate them on CPR so that we can get them out early. And even if we have the best public education and community risk reduction programs, when we respond to the emergencies, we're going to be effective and purposeful. We're going to send the right apparatus with the right trained people to the right calls. We're going to be innovators and maximizers. What does that mean? It's two big buzzwords. We're going to innovate we're going to look at different methods to do things, and we're going to stay current with what's going on so that when we respond, we are innovative. We're going to maximize by partnerships, both internally and externally, and have those partnerships work so that we get a more effective response. I want Sedona Fire to be a role model for industry change. When people say, you know what we should operate like? We should operate like Sedona Fire. They're on the top of the game, and that's where we need to be. Customer service. All right, I tell everybody that our service is a privilege. It is our honor to be serving our public. Right? Whether responding to a true emergency or if a citizen has merely exhausted their personal resources. So if they're out on the trail and get very, very tired and very, very hot, we are there to help them. And when we go out and help them, whether it be a true emergency or they've expended those resources, we're going to exceed the expectations of our community and our visitors. They're going to say, wow, Sedona Fire is there and they're getting it done. Okay? And then professionalism. At all times, as the chief, and I expect my staff, we're accountable to the public. As I said earlier, we have been entrusted with finances and resources that are very expensive. And we treat those like they deserve to be treated. We use them properly, and we go to work with them. When we go out, we conduct ourselves both on and off duty that perform a credit to the organization. Everybody's expected to be at that high standard. We are role models, and people look up to us, and people need to know that they can look for us. We are people first, so we put our people first, and if there's ever anything that comes up, whether it be a disagreement on a shift or a citizen disagrees with how we do something, we're going to be consensus builders. Hey, we're going to work with our personnel and with the public so that we can have consensus and we can move forward through transparent and clear communications. Now, does that mean we're going to bend over every time somebody says something and say, yes, we give in to your will? No, there are certain things that we take a hard stance on, but we're going to maintain a calm and neutral tone and tell them this is why we're doing it, and this is how we're doing it, and this is why it's effective. We may look down the line and have a more effective approach, but this is how we're doing it right now. And when we build that consensus, we're going to make sure it's what's best for the community and the organization, not just what's best for an individual. We're going to put the organization before self. At this time, I'd like to open up for the board for any questions or comments at the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Dickerson. Board, there's listed questions here, unless you have one that you would like on your own. And I'd like to begin on my far left with Board Member Moore, if you'd like to start us out with any questions that you may have.
Of course. I wasn't prepared, no, I'm joking.
Oh, well.
I'm joking.
Okay.
So, yeah. I asked this question earlier, but I just wanted to double confirm that you feel confident coming from currently from a predominantly volunteer department to a predominantly or entirely sworn department. Do you feel that your experience prior to in the departments where they were sworn, that experience will kind of flow through, or how are you feeling about that?
I do feel it will flow through. I've worked for both combination and full-time departments, and I've also trained multiple members of full-time departments. In working through that, I find that sworn firefighters, I can deliver the message and cover a whole shift with one time. With volunteer firefighters, when we change a policy or change something, it turns into a 4-month cycle of making sure everybody found out. It's actually a very easy related over. All my training and experience has been for not volunteer versus career, it's been to be a fire chief. It doesn't matter if they're paid or paid on call.
Great, thank you so much.
Gene?
My question is, how would your employees describe your leadership approach?
Iron fisted. I kid. I like to have, when possible, a very face-to-face communication. I like to communicate. I like to receive feedback. I like to empower my employees so that they are a part of the information. Now, there are certain times, whether it be an emergency scene or when we have to make a quick decision, that as the fire chief or operations chief, I make an immediate decision, and that's the route that we go with. But if there's ever a time where there can be a committee or some active back and forth, I like to use the active back and forth because number one, it empowers people. Number two, it trains them for that next level. And number three, when I have buy-in of the entire department, programs and policies roll right in versus that being jammed down their throat by the chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Al, I'll go to my far right. Do you have anything for Mr. Dickerson?
What would you like the citizens and the community of Sedona and the Sedona Fire District to know about you that perhaps they don't know, since you are a new person?
Being an outside candidate, it's always good. I would like everyone to know that, yes, I am coming from Oregon, but Arizona weather is much better suited for me. It may not look like it from my complexion, but it is. I'm coming to this with support of my family, both my wife and my extended parents, which I've moved to Arizona, and that tourism is here to stay, and the traffic is here to stay. And I've been working with that for the past decade in my other departments that I've worked for, and I'm prepared to help Sedona work through that with the problems that we currently have.
Thank you.
Ms. Cooperman?
Good, yes. That clicking that's happening, is there anything that can be done about it?
I'm unaware of anything, except I'll give you my mic and take yours. I agree.
Thank you, Chief Coyle.
Corey's kryptonite.
Thank you. Chief? Yes. How will you continue to build trust within the community?
Building trust within the community. As any fire district, there's always the mass of people that say, they're the fire department, they're awesome. And there's always the people that are watching us very, very closely. I treat everybody the same, politely, with a safe, friendly demeanor, and say, we are going to be very transparent. We are doing everything that we can, and if you have anything that you would like to recommend that we do, we have open council meetings, and you also are always welcome to come to me with anything that you have. As we build trust, we're gonna be fiscally responsible. We're gonna be transparent. We're really gonna reach out with our community outreach so people know that we're here and know what we're doing and why.
Thank you.
And finally, financial accountability is huge, not only to us as a board, the district as an entity, but to the community as well. You've mentioned transparency and a few other key words. What additional steps would you like to employ to account for additional accountability, financial accountability?
Checks and balances are always very, very good. I know that this board has passed a higher expenditure for the chief to do, but you also still get a review of that, and I think it's very important. I know that QuickBooks Online has some checks and balances, and it's also very transparent. You can see everything that's moving and where it's moving to. I think that as we move into the future, we need to really look at, ideas for that, because as we approach the future, you can only have so many increases in your retirement. You can only have so many increases in health insurance until you hit that cap, and then we're at that cap and we need to start looking at the service level. So by maintaining that service level and watching where we're at, being financially responsible and making decisions that aren't snap right now, we need to make this decision. Is looking at the futurity of those decisions, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, I think is one of the big things that we can do. And then informing our public and the board when we make those decisions, why we're making them, and all the things that we use to make those decisions. We're using data-driven, as well as there's sometimes the data just doesn't always add up. You have to go with what feels best and what the stakeholders and risk assessments show us.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. We will now move on to the next candidate, I believe. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're all done.
Same question.
Okay.
She needs to look at number one on the list.
Stayed in the sequence. Oh.
So she can't ask
Well,
her
because
questions.
of specific, okay.
It was about
But
Consistency.
is it hot in here?
All they tell you to do is do a soft reboot half the time anyways.
Chief Quayle, is the thermostat kicked up a little bit, or is a little warm?
But I think we'll be asking this.
No, it's warm.
Okay.
Oh, you're.
This isn't gonna be easy, What?
Is that you?
We'll begin. Chief Quayle, were you about to do your introduction? I waited till you put that on your
Crackers
plate.
in his mouth.
This is family.
My apologies. Yeah, geez, that was terrible. Mr. John Troutwine from Pasadena, whose first name is Eric, whose Greg Tryon's first name is not Eric. So, and he's going to be the next one to talk to us about why he should be our fire chief.
Okay. Mr. Troutwine, you're on.
Great, thank you, Chief Coyle. I want to say thank you to the board. This has been a very in-depth process, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your commitment and your service to this district. Also, Chief Coyle, I want to compliment Chief Coyle and the administrative staff here and the firefighters. They've conducted themselves very professionally and very supportive, and I think that's made this process easier, so thank you. And then real quick, I want to acknowledge my wife who's here in the back with me, Barbara. Thank you, sweetheart. Another big support to me.
Good job.
You'll find out we're a team. So, I do have as a presentation, a handful of slides I'd like to go to, then obviously we'll entertain any questions. Great, so just as a quick overview in terms of experience, I've successfully provided emergency administrative service to the community for more than 27 years. And some of the areas I believe I have an extensive background are leadership, community risk reduction, emergency management, operations, large event management and planning, training, emergency medical services, technical rescue, public education, and personnel management. So one of the other things I want to highlight on my experience is my executive fire officer certification that I obtained from the National Fire Academy, where you do research and develop as an executive fire officer. It's an outstanding program, and I like to, when I can, encourage other fire officers to participate in that program. There's several strengths I want to highlight here, and you've probably seen a few of this in my resume, but I want to extract them briefly. One is positive leadership. So I've had the opportunity to participate on a labor board, on a management board, on an executive team for over 15 years. I think that really gives me a good snapshot and perspective on what we do in the fire service and what the issues are and how we can come at those at the right angle and get on the same page as a district. The other thing I think under the positive leadership I want to highlight is just I think we obtain that through competence and character. So I think both elements are critical. In other words, be the best you can be at your job and perform at the highest level you can and always try to be better. And then the character, maintaining that integrity, that transparency, that honesty, hitting issues straight ahead. I think those are critical when it comes to positive leadership. The other strength I'd like to highlight is strong relationships. I've had great opportunities in my community in terms of outreach and events and connecting. I think that's critical to have those strong relationships. A couple of the advisory boards that I currently participate on are the Salvation Army Advisory Board in Pasadena, also the Law and Public Service Advisory Board at Pasadena High School, where I get the opportunity to really try to plug some of our high schoolers into some really positive thoughts about career and where they're going to head in their lives. With those strong relationships also are our internal stakeholders, with our firefighters, our Fire Prevention Bureau, our administrative staff. Again, I think you foster a positive environment. You develop those strong relationships internally, because if you have a healthy family, I think it's much easier to serve the community. And the stakeholders in terms of outside stakeholders, the community we've touched on, but also other departments, other agencies, establishing those alliances, establishing those strong relationships. The third strength I want to quickly speak about is effective communications. I've had an incredible opportunity and privilege over the last 5 years in my current organization to manage the fire EMS deployment of our Tournament of Roses, which, as you all know, you've probably seen the Rose Parade on TV, or if you've come out to California, maybe gone to the Post Parade or watched the Rose Bowl game. This is an incredible event. It's the most complex event rated by Homeland Security, and we have 1 million people that come into our infrastructure over a week period, and we manage those people. And I've had the privilege and opportunity to develop that. So with that, in terms of effective communications, I've listed some of the partners I've had as I've done that with Homeland Security, FBI, Coast Guard, Red Cross, National Guard, California National Guard, our California Office of Emergency Services, LA County Office of Emergency Services, sheriffs, our Medical Alert Center, our police, and other law enforcement agencies, and I've listed some of the other fire departments and regional partners. I think this is a great example of, well, how do you get all that on the same page? Well, it's a lot of hard work. It's developing a robust planning process, robust incident action plans, and then also you got to be an effective communicator with briefings. And so this is a great event, and again, I think it highlights one of those strengths that I like to bring to the board today. So why Sedona? I think that's the big question. My research as I look, this is a great community with great people. I'm attracted to that. I like great communities with great people. It's a great place to live. It's very beautiful. It's very scenic. Again, I think you have a solid fire district here. Compliments to Chief Colligan and the fire board. I know we talked a little one-on-one, but I see leaders here. And at this point in my career, I'm attracted to that. I like being with leaders, and I like encouraging leaders to even get better at their game. I'm excited about some of the challenges I see here, and excited about coming alongside, working as a team, and again, to encourage one another to become the best we really can be at what we're doing here, which is protecting the community and providing a high level of service. So again, I think with the experience and knowledge, skill, ability that I want to bring to the table, really it's about, at this point in my career, it's really not about me. It is about the fire district and the community. It's about what I can do to give back. So just highlighting some of the challenges I see here, our wildland urban interface, that's a challenge here. I've got a lot of education, training, and experience in that area, being in Southern California. A couple of the districts in my current organization are some of the highest hazard wildland urban interface areas in Southern California. So we have to plan, we have to put mitigating efforts out there and fire prevention efforts and code enforcement efforts. So there's a lot of things we can do to prepare, and then we also have to prepare on the response side. Make sure we have the apparatus and equipment and personal protective gear, and our firefighters continually be trained and qualified and cert to operate out there safely. Another area I'd like to talk briefly about is technical rescue. I've had a lot of years on our technical rescue team and a lot of experience with our technical rescue team and being able to help develop that team and train with that team, then also help push us to where we could be a part of a regional task force. We are Regional Task Force 4 in California and lead that effort. So again, I think your deployment and the critical need for your special operations and technical rescue, I think I have a pretty good background to support that. EMS, I'm a 20-year paramedic. I've really operated out in the field as a paramedic. I've supervised, and I've gone to the administrative side in terms of research, development, training, certification. So I've kind of worked the whole gamut as a paramedic, and EMS is another growing area. We always have to be on top of that, and those are areas where the numbers keep going up. So we need to be ready to continue to deploy on that. There's two things in my research I hear that you're looking at. One is Lexipol, which is a policy procedure format. I had the opportunity with my organization to actually be one of the initiators of that and take it all to the end. So I think I have a really good experience and ideas about what that is and how we get there with that. Also accreditation. The organization I'm currently with is internationally accredited. It's ISO Class 1 also. So to be a key member of that process, I think it gives you a really good understanding of what that is. Human resources. The last 4+ years, I've managed workers' comp in my department. Over the years as a chief officer, the last 9+ years, I've managed a lot of administrative investigations, personnel issues. Got a lot of kind of interaction with our human resources department and how to develop policy, procedures, process. It's a strength I have, and I really have enjoyed that. The other thing I see, and I see in the state here, we talk a lot about regionalization. I think that's good. We've had a couple conversations about that, but my current system, I have been a part of regionalization when it comes to our dispatch center, also training, also response. We talked a little about the Urban Search and Rescue Regional Task Force. So these are things that are on the fire service's mind and how we improve, how we regionalize, how we lower costs, but still stay efficient and still stay well deployed to handle the issues and the needs. So I see that there's about 3 million tourists that come through the district here every year. It's exciting, but we know, we used to talk about what's the cause of fire. Well, 3 causes: men, women, and children, right? So we could probably say that about EMS emergencies too. So I've got an extensive background with managing large special events, and how we handle those mass gatherings. And we see, I think, culturally in the fire service and across the country, these mass gatherings they could become very dangerous. Mm-hmm. So I know with our law enforcement partners, we partner and we figure out how we can have the most robust deployment that's safe for everyone to come enjoy Sedona. It's beautiful. Some of the leadership things I want to accentuate is that I developed a company officer program. I think company officers are critical in the fire service. These are some things I see us continuing to look at. The National Center for Spectator Sport Safety and Security, or NCS4, I currently received a position with that group to travel across the country and train different communities on risk management assessment. I'm excited about that. It's things I think that are current, proper, and they're things that we would continue to develop here. Also, my intent would be to be involved extensively with the Arizona Fire Chiefs Association, and want to encourage our firefighters to become part of the National Fire Academy programs. They have outstanding programs. They're updating curriculum. There's positive change there. Firefighter Cancer Support Network, I'm connected with colleagues there that I think we can bring some really great training and opportunity here. Also with mental health support, I think that's a area with our fire service that we need to start developing more robust planning, how we're going to handle those issues. And then I know we're working on building some stations here. We're putting some money aside. For a number of years, I've worked with our facilities. We have some old stations. A couple of them are 70 years old. So I understand and know that. I think they're falling apart a little more than what you have here. But with that and all those issues becomes, how do you manage that? How do you plan for that? How do you put the money aside? And also apparatus. I've had opportunity to build a lot of apparatus and do long-term planning, how to do long-term planning, 20-year plans on your replacement. So I think just to close, the mission of the Sedona Fire District, we help people through safe, friendly, and dedicated service. And I got to be honest, when I did research, this really jumped off the page at me. And I kind of felt a little connection there because I have the same heart. And I think it's a great mission. I think it's very well done. And the vision, be a community leader in emergency service to make our district one of the safest places in the world to live, work, and explore. I'd like to be a part of that. To me, that's exciting. And I'm honored that I'm in the top 3. Whether I make it or not, I've learned a lot from the board, from Chief Coyle, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to open it up to questions from the board, and this go around, well, we'll still start with Joy. You've got it.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I'd like to know how your skills and experience make you the best candidate for Sedona Fire.
Well, honestly, I didn't really get a chance to look at the resumes or hear the presentations. The other 2 candidates, my understanding is they're top-notch also. So again, I'm honored to be in that group. I think just reflecting on some of the things I wanted to touch on, I think several of your top challenges, the wildland, EMS, building stations, I've got a lot of experience with that. And I think it would be a natural fit just to come alongside and give you what I've learned and then work hard with you to accomplish those goals.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gene?
Yes, Chief. How would your employees presently describe your leadership approach?
I think they would say that I lead by example. I think that they would see over the last 27 years that I make every effort to whatever responsibility you give me, I'm going to absolutely do the best possible job that I can and be competent at my responsibilities. And I also believe that they trust me, and that's because of having integrity and transparency and honesty. And I believe that that's critical in that relationship building because if that's not your approach, then it really stops a lot of work from getting done. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Al?
John, what would you like the citizens of Sedona and the Sedona Fire District and the community members of this district to know about you?
Well, I love the fire service, and I love being a firefighter. I think when you promote up the ranks, sometimes you get to the chief officer level and you forget what it's like. Because I gotta admit, developing an RFP and getting a PO open, and that might be my life's work for one solid week, right? So that my firefighters have the proper personal protective equipment on a wildland deployment. That's not the most exciting job in the world. But it's very rewarding because I love the fire service and I love being a firefighter. And until I'm out of the fire service, that's always going to be my heart. And I'd like Sedona to know that. That's who I am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Corey?
Yes, we'll just wait a minute to see if we can,
The clicking,
the clicking.
that's my heart. It'll be okay. It'll get back to a normal rate in a minute.
Well, Chief Troutwine, this question is about our community. Specifically, how will you continue to build trust within our community?
I think that's back to the strong relationships, being involved, being engaged, picking select groups, because obviously I can't be everywhere at once, but picking groups and boards that I can be a part of that I can really get a good cross-section of the community to hear that voice, and then develop those strong relationships. I'd rather, if something goes bad, which it does, and I got to make those phone calls with the board or follow up with the community, I'd rather call and say, Jim, we got to talk. Something really bad happened in the business district tonight. rather than, hi, sir, this is who I am. I know you don't know me, but. So I think just being involved, developing those relationships, picking those boards and groups that you need to come around so you get that good cross-section and understand what's going on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, and finally, financial accountability is huge. And the words we always tend to pop up is transparency, oversight. What additional steps or aspects would you add to that for financial accountability?
So, first of all, I being public hearings, reviewing the budget, that brings accountability in and of itself. Everyone can view it, see it. So I think that practice needs to keep. When it comes to the internal accountability, I think you have to, the one thing you do is you need to assess what your process is. Okay, what I mean by that is, do you have one person, let's for example, that maybe opens all your POs, but they do the bids on their own. In this case, maybe they take 3 bids. They go through the correct process, we would hope, right, with the district on its regulations on opening that PO. And then they take the invoices, they process the invoices, and then they pay. So I named like 4 steps that need to happen there. And what we don't want to do is we want to put layers, and that's accountability. It's harder for that. If that person has all 4 steps, then they could actually maybe send that money to a different location, couldn't they? But if there's a couple people involved in that, and Jason looks at me and goes, John, what are you doing? There's no construction company by that name. Oh, you caught me. So I think part of the internal accountability is evaluate your process, make sure it's sound, but you got to have some duplicity and you got to have some multiple eyes on the same thing. And I think that that in and of itself keeps you internally accountable, and then putting the budget out in public every year, absolutely. Go through the process. Let people come up and comment, and evaluate that.
Great, well, thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation and taking the time today.
You're welcome. Thank you, board. I appreciate it.
I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting.
I hope it's not my meditation workshop. We reached high frequencies. We aimed at high frequencies. You think it's
Sure.
mic control or something? It could be. I never use it. But I'll turn it off.
Executive session.
There, I've turned it off now. Maybe that's it. Yeah, I don't need it. I don't use it. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that would explain it. Okay. I see. You could tell it was mine. Okay. That's probably it.
We've got one board member in the restroom, and then Joy's right there. So. Okay. Yeah. We got Gene in the restroom. So.
I shortened my name for you too, by the way.
So I would like to introduce to you Mr. Greg Tryon. He's going to be the third finalist to provide a presentation for you and then to answer any questions that you may have. As soon as we get done with Greg's presentation, then we will bring the other candidates down in here and then adjourn into executive session if it pleases the board. But we'll bring them down before we do that so we
Sure.
can
Thank
let
you.
everybody know what's up. All right, thanks.
Mr. Tryon, it is you've got the floor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, board. Appreciate it. Thank you, audience. Madam Mayor, appreciate your time to be able to stand back and give you a little bit about who I am and perhaps lead to any questions or go forth from there. I put up there my wife, Micah. I was actually married for 20 years before my wife unexpectedly passed away and sort of was okay moving forward. I met this wonderful woman, and she brought 3 amazing kids with her. And the eldest is a 16-year-old who's the most naturally gifted leader I have ever met in my entire life. She's got plans. She's gone. Next one is a 15-year-old boy, Ethan. He's as tall as me, outweighs me by about 30 pounds, loves football, rugby. And then we have a 10-year-old fashionista diva. And she's a fashionista diva, so I'm scared, very scared. We have 2 dogs, and we now have this cat that enjoys all night walking around opening doors. It's that big, so I'm not sure how I ended up with that. Recently, about 2 years ago, I graduated from the University of Washington with a master's in public administration. It sort of really focused some things that I'm focused on now in the fire service. I graduated from Grand Canyon University with a emergency management and fire administration degree. And the other ones are just little stuff, but probably the one I'm most proud of is that thing called Leadership Eastside Certificate. It's a 2-year program on adaptive leadership in the community, how to lead a community. Because when leading a community, it's about a conversation about values. Because everybody comes to something with something that's very personal to them. And if I say my value is more valuable than yours, fight's on. So how do we have really tough conversations and lead us through to get to those important decisions? Because the decisions aren't going away. And the relationships are equally as important. So we have to work through that. That got me to there. Anything about education and development of others, that's my passion. That's really where I just love it. I love learning, I love reading. It's all about that. So my fire department I come from is 190 square miles. It's just outside of Seattle, so it's a suburb of it. It goes from very urban to very rural, so wilderness, urban interface. It has 5 separate jurisdictions. They've all signed an agreement with each other saying we promise to respond as a single fire department, and that's what we do for the last 20 years. We operate more as a district, but we have very familiarity with what it's like to operate in a municipal environment and their challenges versus the district's challenges. Population is about 135,000. Roughly the area is the headquarters for Costco, Amazon, Microsoft are all in that area. We have lots of people that come from outside our community to visit us, work there themselves. It's not tourism-based like this, but there's lots of transient populations that come through. My background is 27 years in the fire department as I started as a volunteer. I have held pretty much every position, including the interim fire chief, 3 years ago before we hired a chief out of Chandler, Arizona. I'm currently in charge of administration, so HR, finance, all of those things. But again, I've been operations, I've been the fire marshal, health and safety officer. The thing I get to do now is focus on ethical leadership of our new hires. We've changed up entirely how we hire people. And one of the things that we're really doing is spending time up front to say, what do we expect? How do we expect you to behave in our community and in our fire department? Make them prepared so they understand how that they can excel at any level that they're going to choose to be a part of in the organization. That's kind of cool. I really like doing that. In the health and safety officer focus, I've been really focused on peer support. Death of my wife, a number of other things I've experienced. I've been in charge of our peer support team since about 2005. What we know now is that suicides are outpacing line of duty deaths for occupational or operational issues. We got to fix that. There's ways to do that, but it takes work. Again, I talk about hiring focus. We've changed up entirely how we hire people. It's because everybody is hiring right now in my local. We're all fighting for that same person. And I need the people, once we hire them, to stay. Since we've changed up about 3 years ago, we've lost one person, and we knew that they were going to be a problem at the very beginning. But 40 people have added to our organization that we were never going to see the way they were in our old system. The people who put that together, I'm in awe of, because that's what they did. Finally, community. That thing called Leadership Eastside, again, that's a 2-year program. They talk about leadership for the common good. Their job is to bring nonprofit, profit, and government together through a 2-year program, and we work in the community. We develop and focus on real-world problems in our communities and how to help our communities solve their problems. Not me saying, oh, this is how you're going to do it, but how to get them to fix and work and go forward in their own issue. Because I can't get them there. They have to buy into the process. That's what that program does. I just recently got selected to be part of their board of directors. I'm their first public safety person that's ever been part of that. I'm very excited about that. Community impact coaches. One of the things I get to do now is I get to be a volunteer for community impact teams. These groups that come out of that 2-year training program, they spend about a year working on this project, and I get to help coach them. So I get to work with these amazing, phenomenal leaders in the community and help them be even better. And I get to learn so much, because I like to say I'm a slow learner, so they teach me a lot. That's kind of where I am. Facilitator, you're going to hear me talk about, if I was fortunate enough to be here, a thing called gracious space. How do we create an environment and a spirit where we invite the stranger and learn and grow and develop? That's what you're going to hear from me. You see something there called REAL. It's Racial Equity Adaptive Leadership. And what I started into it was what you think about racial equity and what it means to our community. What I took out of it is how my fire department can be better, how we were doing things that had nothing to do with racial equity, and we were messing things up. An example, we've been hiring so many people, we tried to bring in laterals, people with experience in the fire service, so we could fill in that gaps that we were creating. We're really good at welcoming new people into the fire service in our organization. We were absolutely miserable to people who had prior experience. And that taught me that we do have a problem. And it isn't just about gender, race, or whatever else. We're doing it down to levels that we weren't even thinking about. It's caused me to rethink about how we do that, which gets me to my purpose. I had to stand up in front of those 40 people that I spent 2 years, blood, sweat, and tears with, and tell them what my purpose was. I couldn't lie to them. And my purpose is to bring people and organizations together so all can thrive and be successful. And I'm close, so thank you. I appreciate your time tonight. I've enjoyed this process. All 3 of us have been talking about the most powerful thing to us is that you took this seriously, because we stressed our families, we stressed our fire departments to be part of this. And the fact that you took it seriously to this point meant the world to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll open it up to questions, and again, we'll start at my left, and we'll move all the way to our right.
Sorry, I'm always chewing. Always eating. Okay.
Then you're not hangry, that's good.
I know.
Okay.
It's wise to let me eat.
Okay.
So I just wanted to know how your experience and skills are going to make you the best candidate for Sedona Fire District.
So that little symbol, that Mobius strip in the corner of my PowerPoint there, it's not a continuous line. I have to keep coming back to things. Part of that is you have amazing people. You have a chief who is jumped multiple steps and is managing your fire department. And from what I can tell, not only have you not skipped a beat, you're moving forward. You have an organization that's very similar to mine, which is it's built around cost efficiency as well as service to the community and everything else. But that means you have lots of people wearing lots of hats. You have little people wearing lots of hats. And so what my job is to make sure that they understand how they're valued, how they can be part of the greater good, and make sure that we as a fire department are so thoroughly engaged in our community that the community could not imagine us to be any different and look forward to seeing what we're going to do next. That's where I think I can help.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gene?
Greg, how would your employees your employees presently, describe your leadership approach.
I know my union president spoke with Sedona's labor last night because I got a little text saying, hey, they called me, what's going on? I sort of kept it generally quiet. Oops, which is a good thing. I think what he would tell them, as anybody else would say, is that it is about the employees. It's not about open checkbooks. It's not about yes to everything. But the community, the employees, they have to know, they have to feel that they're going to be heard. Especially when you're in a department like this that's got, this amazing admin staff who's wearing so many hats, and then you've got these amazing group of 72 plus firefighters out on the line. We'd be silly not to engage them, not to have them part of the success of this community, of this fire department. I think what they would say is that that's what Greg does. They also joke that it would take 2 or 3 of them to figure out what Greg's email is, but I'm working through that. So that's what they would say.
Thank you.
Al?
How would you like the citizens of Sedona and the Sedona Fire District, the community members of this district, to know about you? What would you like them to know?
What I have come to learn in 27 years in the fire service is that the fire service has an opportunity to support our community far beyond just responding to their emergency calls. That's what these firefighters do fantastic. They are amazing. They give those people who call 911 the best opportunity to return to a normal condition. But what I want people to know is that I think our fire department can be even more than that. And the value back to the fire department is a sense of we belong, we're part of you, we have this great future, we need your support. And the only way to do that is that fire department, much like the firefighters, to know that they can be heard. Sometimes tough decisions are made by both the agency, the electeds, for the greater good, but they need to know that this is their fire department, and I want them to feel that. Not always easy, but that's what I want.
Thank you.
Thank you. Corey?
This question is about our community. How will you continue to build trust within the community?
I think simply it's showing up. It's sitting through that very difficult conversation. I try to tell my crews, my agencies, that if I see them, if they see me running off a cliff, I would really like them to tell me to stop. And if they start off with, hey, jerk, you're running off a cliff, I might not listen to them, but it's still my responsibility because they were trying to help me. My goal is to get so the first word out of their mouth isn't, hey, jerk, the cliff's coming up. But I want my community to feel like that they can actually be heard when they have concerns. They have ideas. Should we ban residential burning or not? Somebody should be able to come to express that. And know that you will take diligent consideration, whatever the outcome is. They know that it will be evaluated and gone forth. It's showing up. It's being at meetings. It's being at events. It's making sure that the fire department has the right tools for their job, has the right mission. Fire departments are notorious for taking on whatever comes down the road because nobody else is going to do it, and we care about our communities. But sometimes our communities need to be actively engaged in that conversation so they understand what the cost or the impact is going to be to them for that. And you can't do that if you only show up with your hand out saying, I need. We can't use the term babies are going to die. Statistically, that's not what's going to happen. But we can say we can be part of the greater good. How do we make us all successful and thrive?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then finally, just a quick question on financial accountability. We always use words like transparency and fiducial responsibility and so on and so forth, but what steps would you take additionally to ensure that we had financial accountability?
a number of things is, you know, I know how my state operates. I have a steep learning curve coming from outside the state to make sure that, but I have some amazing resources sitting right here. Next is, as you know, this team has already started to assemble, is does everybody in the organization understand how they're part of the budget? Transparency starts with the firefighters, because the firefighters are the ones who people run into more. When people walk into this space, TVs and cameras and all this stuff, they're loaded for bear. Our firefighters have this great ability to disarm and diffuse things if we give them the knowledge, the skill sets, the capacity to answer questions or get them more information, who to speak to. That's one thing, so that from the ground up, it's like the strategic plan. The strategic plan cannot be living solely in this room. It has to be a living, breathing document throughout the organization. That's where the budget starts. I need to make sure that you all have the budget. We start deliberations, that there are vigorous, that either myself or Gabe make sure that any questions that aren't asked but we can see they're out there, that we get them out of you, because you do represent the community. The community needs to know that you represent them, and if they can understand that those questions have been asked and answered, and this is what the budget is, again, there's less likely to have dissent. The work, again, that this team has done about making sure that people know how to budget. What does it mean to budget? What parts of the budget are available for emergencies? What parts of the budget are available for the day-to-day operations of this organization? I think that's where it starts, first and foremost. And then make sure that we follow the rules. Proper notifications. People have access to the information. What does it mean to mean a mill rate? Well, this means it's this per thousand. Okay, what does that mean? And be able to walk them through that. We like to use terms a lot, and fire departments are really bad at that. And we need to be able to step back a little bit in that communication model to do that. So that's really, it's not implementing necessarily new plans, new processes. It's making sure that from the ground floor all the way up, people are invested in their own organization so that they can speak truthfully, honestly, vigorously about why we do what we do.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our questions and answers. And Chief Coyle, I'll turn it back over to you for the next phase here.
Yeah, so what'll happen now is that the other candidates will come down here, and then it's kind of, I don't know, silly, but a process piece. And then we'll have them, the board will probably move to go into executive session. All the candidates to that, well, we'll give direction when they come down here. But, so everyone could just stand by for a moment. We will, but we gotta wait for the other ones. Yeah. All right. So, candidates, after the board, not me, I don't do anything except explain what's going to happen, moves to go to executive session, then if the three of y'all could come up to my office, and then that'll be kind of the staging area, and then what you do is we'll ask you to come in one at a time into executive session, and then we'll return you to the staging area. Sounds better than holding pen of my office. And then we'll move through some stuff. So yeah, after they break, if you want to, use a restroom or whatever, grab a water, and then meet me up in my office, and then we'll bring you into the executive session in the chief's office one at a time, which is where you have the media interview. So with that, Mr. Chairman.
Chief Coyle, am I also correct in assuming that once we are done with the executive session, that the 3 candidates will remain sequestered, if you will, and then a motion will be made for the candidate, and then that candidate will be brought down on its own, on his own?
Yeah, so,
Because what I'm getting at is this may be the last time we see all 3 of them together, and I'd like to offer a round of applause for the dedication and hard work that they've done.
so I'm not very good at theater, so I'll just tell you guys exactly what the idea is here. What we don't want to do is we don't want to bring you all back in here and offer one of you the position, the other 2 not, and have that be an uncomfortable or embarrassing experience for you. We have talked, among the different members, even those sneaky labor guys, about what a great group of finalists we have, and I really want to honor the dedication that you put into the process. At the same time, it's a public meeting, so you can come back down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make my office upstairs available to you. You're more than welcome to come down here, and if you leave without a prom date, not my fault. Or you can stay over there, and then we can let you know. And you don't have to, we talk about it as soon as we break, but that's the general idea. So that was the process that the board chair was talking about. Is we don't want, trying to be kind and appropriate. So that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. With that said, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session for discussion or consideration of terms and conditions of employment pursuant to Arizona revised statutes 38-431.03A1 for legal advice pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3, and possible instructions to legal counsel pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A4 in regards to a possible fire chief's contract. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. We are now in executive session.